Okay, today we're going to talk about Creo Freestyle. I'm Joshua Fontana from Boundary Systems. Okay, so for the agenda to start off, we're going to I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce Boundary Systems, and then I'll introduce Freestyle. And then afterwards, I'll do a demonstration of Freestyle so you have a better understanding of what it's about, and then afterwards we'll do a short Q&A. So again, I'm Joshua Fontana. I'm a Boundary Systems Applications Engineer. I've been with Boundary Systems for a few years now. I do have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and an associate's degree in mechanical drafting and design. Some of my specialties are in manufacturing processes, value stream management, lean, and engineering software. So Boundary Systems. So Boundary Systems is a tech leader in many industries with partners including PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, and Autodesk. We're the number 16th fastest growing private company in the greater Cleveland area, with capabilities handling product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design and consulting, simulation as far as FEA or mold flow or other analysis, and then also product development. And as you can see over there on the right hand side, there's a small portion of some of the companies that we handle. We handle their support or any other software needs. Okay, so we have some awards associated with Boundary Systems too. So some industrial awards as far as the Inc. 5000 and the Weatherhead 100, and some other accreditations from PTC. And some of them are we are also a Windchill certified implementer, so we can come to your company, implement Windchill. We're also a PTC preferred service provider and a PTC certified training partner. Okay, so some of the solutions that we offer are from PTC, Solid Thinking, Autodesk, eTraj, and Noesis. So if you have any further questions, you can go ahead and email me at jfontana@boundarysys.com if they're technical related. And if they're sales related, if you're wondering how much something costs or something of that nature, if maybe you want some training, then you can email sales@boundarysys.com. Okay, so let's talk about the typical freestyle modeling process here. So the first step is optional, but using a sketch in the form of a PGN or a TIFF or a JPEG file that you bring in to utilize for reference helps define characteristics of your design. So you can use a sketch to define overall relative size, location of edges, openings, creases, and so on. And as you can see there on the left-hand side, that's just an image that's brought in that was created with Creo Sketch. And then you can bring that right into Creo Parametric to utilize as reference. I do want to mention one other use case here is one of my customers had some topology software that was generated some geometry with Inspire or other sorts of software like that. But it was kind of coarse, and the outcome wasn't really what he wanted. So what he did is he brought that into Creo Parametric and then utilized Freestyle to overlay his existing geometry. So it had nice smooth surfaces. So that's just another use case. Okay, so second, once you get your reference geometry in there, or reference images, you can insert a primitive. So the Freestyle tool provides you with a set of 2D and 3D primitive shapes, such as circles, spheres, cubes, and so on, which are used as starting points for your design. Once placed in the model, a primitive shape can be scaled to fit relative to the imported conceptual sketch or geometry. So afterwards, after you get your primitive in there, you can go ahead and manipulate your primitive. So the primitive shape has a control mesh surrounding it. That's what you can see there in that image. The mesh around it is called the control mesh that you can manipulate. The mesh elements can be manipulated by dragging, rotating, scaling, and so on. The Freestyle tools provide a highly interactive environment, enabling you to create design models with complex organic shapes. Using tools like extrude and split, the system creates additional edges and surfaces on the model, all of which can be worked into the final design. So some of the ways that you could manipulate this, or methods, is either using the 3D drag handle, which you can see there on the left-hand side of the image. And then another way is using the circular menu. So that's the image on the right-hand side here. That's a circular menu, and you achieve that circular menu by selecting a surface or an edge or a vertex, and then utilizing right mouse button, and then that menu will display. And of course, all the commands in the ribbon. And then once you get your general shape down, you can add finished features such as creases, rounds, add thickness to it to complete the geometry. So at this point here, once you add thickness, it has and adds density, then it has weight, and it's a 3D solid model at that point. So that's something to point out, is that Freestyle is a surfacing tool. So you can utilize any combination of the surfacing tools, whether it's technical surfacing, ISDX, and Freestyle. You can, all those different paradigms of surfacing you can utilize together, and then also utilize your 3D modeling, solid modeling, also in able to achieve your goal. So now we'll go on with the demo. I like this here. We have just this slide here with a bunch of different examples of Freestyle. So we'll get out of the slides here and go right into Creo Parametric 3.0. Okay, so first off, we need to put in an image. We want something for reference. So you can use anything that you can think of. You can take a picture of a car and then save it off as a JPEG, and then bring it in and then start modeling your car with the Freestyle. So let's go ahead and go to and bring in an image. So we can import an image and then select a place to put your image. Of course, you need a reference. So I'll go ahead and bring in this image. And once you have your image, the image may not be scaled correctly. So you can go ahead and there's a nice feature called fit, and then you can fit the image to the appropriate dimension that you need to. So I want this to be 350 units, and then I can go ahead and move this image to an appropriate location, like so. So now we have our image in there. We can select OK to exit that. As we can see, it's just a 2D image out here in 3 space, sitting on this data plane. So now we can go to the Model tab and the Surfacing group here. We see Freestyle. I will mention that Freestyle is a free feature. It comes with a seat of Creo Parametric already. So you can handle, or you already have access to this feature. So right here, we'll go ahead and select the Freestyle feature. And it gives us the Freestyle tab with the Freestyle dashboard. So now I'm going to go ahead and put in my primitives. As you can see, there's a decent amount of primitives here. I'm going to go ahead and select this sphere. And now that we have our sphere in here, we can see that it's a 3D sphere. We have the control mesh that surrounds the primitive. So I'm going to go ahead and select all the entities there and then scale it, because it's a little too big for what I'm doing here. And then I can utilize the right mouse button and change what I'm trying to do here. So if I want to transform or scale, or planarize, or align something, or delete, I can do that right here. I don't have to go up to the dashboard and able to do that. So I'll go ahead and move this up here now. Maybe I'll select this top edge and transform that down. Okay, so notice you can select a surface here and translate and rotate that around if need be freely. So there's no dimensions associated with this. You're just pulling and pushing on whether it's the surfaces, or I'm sorry, the planes, the edges, or the individual vertices. You can select an individual vertex also. Okay, so we have that started off there. So we'll go ahead and keep manipulating this geometry. Go ahead and go ahead and move this a little bit. Okay, that looks good. So we may need more geometry here, so let me change this a little bit here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just select, you can see this top surface is selected here. We can extrude that up, and it creates an extra material there for us to manipulate. We can drag that down and then rotate it a bit. As you can see, we're trying to get this type of shape that's going to line up with our sketch. So that's the end goal here. So we keep on manipulating this until we got something close. And then I can create another extrude, translate that, maybe rotate it. And I'll do that one more time. Create another extrude. Let me change this a little bit. Then rotate that. Okay. So at this point, we'll go ahead and further refine this a little bit. Because we can see this looks a bit bulky compared to what the image is in the background. So I'll go ahead and select these geometry over here and just translate that. Maybe the geometry over here, you can just highlight them all. Whenever you highlight them all, it selects the vertices, the surfaces, and everything. Okay, so that's starting to come together. I'll select this surface here. We'll translate that down a bit. Now we can start to see our image in between. Maybe the same with this one. Move it down, not the edge. Let me select this surface here. Move that down a bit. There we go. There's our image in the background. Select this edge. Maybe pull that up a bit. Okay, so that's starting to look good. Now I'm just using the 3D dragger here. I can rotate these and translate them until I can start to see my image in the background. Okay. So as we can see here, we need to add a little bit more here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this edge and just drag it out a bit. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So as we can see, the control mesh is on both sides of our image, a reference image. So this thing's going to be symmetrical. So there's a nice tool here in Freestyle that allows me to mirror the control mesh. And basically what that does is we can select the faces on one side and then mirror them relative to a datum, of course, and then it gets rid of the other side of the control mesh. So anything that's done on this side also happens on the other side. So that'd save a lot of time, increasing productivity. So next, we need to manipulate this a little bit more. It looks a little chunky still in this direction, so I'm going to utilize, select all four of these surfaces and just translate them in a bit. There we go, it looks a little better. And of course, you can utilize all your different selection techniques needed, whether it's control or shift for your edge or surface, multiple edge or surface selection techniques. Now we see the control mesh right now is pretty coarse. So there's a couple different ways to add or refine the control mesh itself. One way is using an edge split. So you can split the edge of any of your control meshes multiple times, whether it's 1 to 4. So I'm going to split this 2 times. As you can see, it adds more definition into the control mesh. So, and that's exactly what we want, is to be able to take these center surfaces here and drag them out to increase the roundness of our part. So this is a good general shape here. So I think I'm going to drag this out just a little bit more. There we go. All right, so that looks good. Okay, so once we have that, of course, at both ends of this part, we need to have an opening for flow. So I'm going to go ahead and just select these 3 surfaces here and then say delete. And just hit the delete on the keyboard, and it becomes hollow at that point. I'll do the same on this side. I'll use the circular menu, as you can see there. So now that's starting to look good. So this looks a little big over on this side. So what I'm going to do is just translate this in a little bit. There we go. just to change the shape. Okay, so now that we have this, we need some sort of handle in here. So we know the consumers are going to want an easier way to grip this nozzle. So a nice tool for that is we're going to go ahead and put a hole right through here. And an easy way to do that is to use the mirror connect or the connect mirror. So that'll basically make this surface protrude to the other side, connecting to the other existing surface there, and then allow a hole to be there. So just like the image that we had before in the background, it had a hole, has a hole here. So we can't quite see it. We can see a little bit of it here. So we need to still manipulate some of this control mesh to get the shape down correctly, as close to the image as possible. And again, just by selecting on the surfaces or the vertices or the edges, you can manipulate, translate these appropriately. Okay, so that looks pretty good. You can see the edges of the image in the background right there. They're lined up well. So now we have this surface body. Notice it's real smooth also. And it'd be harder to achieve a shape like this if you're trying to do it with solid modeling techniques or just regular surfacing techniques. So we'll just go ahead and hit accept here. We can see we have our freestyle feature over in the model tree. We can select that and then just say thicken. And then define the direction and amount of thickness. Once we add thickness to it, it changes color because now it's a solid model. So then we can go ahead and manipulate this just as if it was any other solid model. Add holes, rounds, things of that nature, but we're not quite done yet. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and edit definition, the freestyle feature, and add more geometry here. So first off, the nozzle needs to be quite a bit wider down here at the bottom. So I can select this individual surface here, or this face, and extrude away from that face. So I'll go ahead and say extrude here. Now I'll go ahead and drag this out. Notice that happens on the other side because it's still mirrored. And I'll drag it back a little bit maybe, and out a bit more. So that looks pretty good. There's one thing I'll mention also is that if you have multiple images or sketches, you can put another image on another plane, so you have two references for two different directions of dimensions. So notice how sharp this looks right here. That's not desirable, and we can easily change that by changing the amount of crease that's happening. So you can take the slider here and increase or decrease the amount of crease easily. So I want it to be a hard crease. You could have a soft crease also where the edges are still round. But I want that to be a hard crease, okay? And again, notice it happens on the other side automatically. So we also need to have this surface here induce flow into the system. So we'll go ahead and delete this surface. Now it opens that up quite well. So make this a little better looking, we can take this surface and rotate it a little bit. Maybe move this edge down a bit. There we go. So that looks pretty good. And we realize we'll probably need a little bit more room in here for all the other geometry or apparatuses that go in here, so we can change the geometry here to add a little bit more room. Again, here I'm just selecting individual edges to increase or to translate or scale them. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. Another thing is, you notice here at the top, we need to have a sort of swedge in here and be able to create the attachment point. So I'll go ahead and I want to extrude these edges here. Here, let me just redo that. Here we go. And let's extrude this out a little bit, and maybe a little bit more. Do one more extrude here, and then I can select these surfaces here, and then if I right mouse button, I can define how it's going to react. So whenever I scale this or move it, I want it to be normal to the existing surfaces. So go ahead and move this out a bit. Okay, so that looks good. And then I want to create a hard crease in here too. So, oops, select that edge, and if I hold the shift key, I can select this existing edge and it selects the entire loop. Okay, so I want to increase the crease here also. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. Creates a nice edge right there. Okay, and we can always go back and go back to the thickened feature and see how it updates. So you can see here, it updates appropriately. There's no regeneration errors. So at this point, we really don't need this image anymore. So we can go back and hide that image. So now we have our 3D model here. And the nice part about this is that you can also utilize some parametric features. So we'll go ahead and add some rounds to these two edges here. And as you can see, it rounds off those edges. So you may be concerned about the curvature associated with this model also. So another nice thing is that you can go ahead and just do your curvature analysis or your reflection analysis on this part. So as you can see, the lines mesh well from the individual surfaces, and there's no interruptions in between one location to another. Besides that, this hard crease, but that's intentional. So we know our surfaces have a high continuity. So that's good. So now we can go back, if we need to, go back into the Freestyle feature and maybe change this a bit. So maybe we'd like to have another creased surface in between from here to here. And it looks a little bit wide at the top here too. So we'll go ahead and select this surface here, or this face, and just pull it in. So now even smaller people will be able to grab hold of this with smaller hands. Okay, and again we can select this surface here, or this edge and this edge, and maybe add a little crease there, make it look a little sportier. And maybe the angle of this is off. Later on down the road, we find out that maybe a different angle would be a little more ergonomic. So we can select the control mesh and just change the geometry a bit. Maybe we'd like to increase its overall length. You can easily do that just by dragging the components. Maybe rotate this around a bit. So that's our overall Freestyle feature. You can see that it's very easy to use. Another thing I want to mention real quick is, if I go back into the Freestyle, we see that the control mesh is still relatively coarse. There's multiple levels of the control mesh that you can utilize. So right now we're dealing with the base level for all the topology changes. And it can go all the way up to level 3. So the higher the level, the more subdivisions there are of the control mesh. So let me show you what each one of those are, just so you have a better idea of what the subdivisions are. So here is the first subdivision. As you can see, there's a lot more definition in the control mesh. Actually, I'm going to zoom in quite a bit here, just so you can see better. And then we'll go to level 2. Adds even more vertices, edges, faces, and then all the way up to level 3. Now, each and every one of these edges, vertices, and faces you can select on an individual basis, or you can select groups of them and manipulate them. So let's say this face right here, you can just drag it right up. Now, granted, this is just an example. That would be undesirable in this case, but if you need more definition, you can easily add more definition to your geometry just by changing the level of the control mesh. But I highly suggest getting as much definition into your geometry at the base level first, before you go into the other levels of the control mesh. Okay, so that is the basics of Creo Freestyle. So just like in this slide here, you can see there's a vast array of objects that you can create with Freestyle, from 2D features, just creating 2D surfaces and pulling and pushing them to make a specific shape, or 3D also, as you can see in all these other ones. So again, I just want to mention my contact information here and sales information. If you have any tech questions, feel free to give me an email. I'll also, right here, we'll go ahead and take some time to answer any questions that you guys have currently. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in over in your GoToWebinar panel, and I will be sure to answer them. Okay, so one of the questions is if this is a specific module associated with Creo Parametric. So this is actually built into all the seats of Creo Parametric. It's not an extension or anything, so you don't need to purchase it. So you should be able to use it right now as we speak if you have a valid seat of Creo Parametric. So feel free to test it out and check it out as you need to. Let's see what else. So yeah, another question is there going to be a video available of this demo? And yes, there is. We will have a video up on, we'll be placing it up on YouTube at some points, and I'll be sure the marketing, or I'll send you a link directly of this video. Now, if there's any other questions, feel free to type them in there, and then I will answer them. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I would just like to thank you for your time, and have a good day.